G'day guys, welcome to the next installment of the Woodford Sports Science Consulting podcast. I am Christian Woodford, and today the podcast is actually on junior athletic development, and that's anything that could be, it's not just elite, it's junior physical preparation, junior development, anything from the ages of 9 to about 17. That's what I classify junior athletic development. And how in Australia we can improve as a whole in terms of physical preparation and what we're doing wrong and how we can improve on it. Before I start, obviously a few things going on at the centre, a few big things. First of all, we had our first intake of applied sports science, applied strength conditioning interns down at Woodford Sports Science Consulting, where they actually get a certificate, an actual certificate. After it's an allied health certificate, 3 and 4. We started that off this week, an induction day. Went really well. We've got about 50 passionate students, all from I'm pretty sure all of them from exercise science. We did put an ad out for anyone, exercise science, allied health, anything of that stream where there's still a student who want to learn about applied sports science, applied strength conditioning while using evidence-based practice, because the biggest issue that I see is these kids with all this information, but they've got nowhere to apply it. I mean, where do you go after exercise science where they're pumping them out, yet there's nowhere where these kids can go and actually use the theory and apply it? Well, there's minimal places, and that's what we've done this for them to be able to coach and develop as a coach in a high-performance applied sports science environment, other than the fact that they go to a Fitness First or a Genesis or a big chain gym and they just get completely fucked over because they're pushed straight into it. So they've got to pay rent straight off the bat. It's not about programming. It's not about coaching. It's not about using sports science. It's about selling from the start. That's the whole issue that they have. They don't get to develop, and they don't have time to actually learn the fundamentals of being a coach, fundamental sports science principles. So yeah, that's the biggest issue. So we wanted to give them the chance to be able to do that. They had to meet certain criteria. We selected 50, and I was proud of the 50 that we went with. They're all passionate. They all want to learn. And the one thing I got from them yesterday is they're all hungry to get jobs. It's the whole issue is there's not enough jobs here. I mean, I'm living proof that if you put your mind to something, there is a market for it in terms of high performance, other than your powerlifting, Olympic lifting gyms, CrossFit gyms. That's a sport within itself. We're talking about performance coaching and what is performance coaching, what is athletic development. And everyone wants to do it. You go out of uni, and what's the first thing they fucking all say? Fuck, I want to be a performance coach. Well, fuck. Not many people can actually do that. And even in the private sector, I don't think there was no work in the private sector. Obviously started this 2 years ago nearly, and it's developed to a point where it is quite good. And a lot of people know about what applied sports science is, what applied strength conditioning is, but that's what we want to do, is make more jobs. And hopefully with these kids pushing out, they've obviously got the theory, but then they've got the applied side where they can actually coach, and we can actually develop the private sector, because at the moment, the private sector, it's not that big, and we're trying to develop it. Number 2, I got approached to become the face of high-performance training of this company. Very excited. We're going to launch, they're going to launch in probably the next 2 weeks. You're going to find out through Facebook what it's about and how I'm getting involved. Very excited. It's kind of like defining what is high-performance training. And that's the biggest issue, especially in Australia. There's no segmented train in terms of no one knows the difference between what's a personal trainer, what's a physiologist, what's an exercise scientist, what's a strength conditioning performance coach. No one knows the difference here. It's all lumped up. There's a grey area. So what myself, Woodford Sports Science Consulting, and this company wanted to do was, let's define what high performance training is. What is high performance? What is the difference between high performance, personal training, and everything else? And how do we define what high performance is? And we kind of want to make sure it's segmented now, especially in the private sector, where everything's thrown together, a whole heap of shit. How can we define it, and what's the difference between that and everything else? So I was very excited to get on board. It is a big company. I'm very humbled when they did ask me to be the face of it. It is quite exciting. I've been interviewed a few times by them. So that will be released in the next few weeks. A bit of media going on. I'm getting filmed by a few other companies that will come out on the Woodford SSC Facebook page. I've got Hampo, NFL strength conditioning coach Alex Hampton, one of my mates. He's actually doing a workshop July 4th. If you want to book now. You've literally got a day. We're closing all bookings tomorrow. If you want to book for that, book that now. This guy's a freak, best in the world. I am the sideshow to him. I am secondary. So you guys, the people who are going to that, you enjoy it because I'll be doing it with him. But literally, man, I'll be learning just like you guys. The guy's a freak. It is the pinnacle of being a strength coach in the NFL, literally a pinnacle. You are a coach over there. It is brilliant. Obviously, I've only seen the college side of it. He's seen the college and NFL side, so pick his brain. It's not that expensive to go to this workshop. If you want to know more information, info@woodfordssc.com. The guy's just a freak, so I would suggest coming along if you're a coach, aspiring strength coach, athlete, whatever it is, go see him. Last point, quickly before we start this podcast. The podcast that I will be doing from now on will be start to interviewing the best strength coaches, rehab coaches in the world. So I don't know if you saw my post. I'm actually interviewing Terry Condon, Australian Institute of Sport consultant, rehab consultant. Very excited. Terry, I actually talked to him a few days ago. We had a Skype session and we had a real good chat and really talked about Terry and his background, what's he done, what his methodologies are, what he believes in terms of developing the total athlete. He's brilliant, very switched on guy. That interview will come next week. That's one not to be missed. I'm actually going to start to interview more strength coaches. As I said, I want to bring you guys the best of the best Australian talent that we've got. I want to rival Mike Boyle in his podcast. Now, that's never going to happen. Obviously, Mike Boyle, big name. Not saying I'm anywhere near him, but it's kind of like I want to give you guys the best Australian coaches, like the T-Nation boys or American. I want to give you guys the best Australian coaches and push us out there, make us mainstream. So, Terry Condon, and I'm going to interview a few NFL guys. Some college guys, some AFL blokes, hopefully, A-League people. The best will come out of this Woodford SSC podcast. So I want you guys to understand we have some very good homegrown talent here as coaches, and I love to push them out there. And just what makes them tick, what are their methodologies. I mean, if you guys know anything about my methods, you can have 5 different coaches all programming differently, but all end up to the same goal. The thing about strength conditioning is you might have subtle differences as the coach next to you, but the core principles stay the same, the core methodologies. Compound, multi-joint, multi-planar, ground-based, kinetic chain, posterior chain development. So you can have subtle differences the way you coach, the way you program, what you like, what you don't like, but the core methodologies will always stay the same. Do the basics well, and the rest will come. And that's one thing that I've always pushed hard is stick to the basics, because the basics will always work 99.95% of the time. You do something explosive, you do a lower body push, a squat, you do a lower body pull, which is a deadlift, you do a supplementary unilateral movement, you do a core movement. I know that's very simplistic, but the basics work in terms of strength, power, speed, agility, and human performance. Stick to the basics and you'll reap the rewards. Okay, so junior development. So going back to the first thing I was talking about. Junior development's an interesting one. Especially in Australia, you've got to look at what is our main sport in Australia. What is it? AFL. Now, everything I relate back to in terms of training goes back to when I was younger. So I used to play cricket and football, and I played at a decent level. I'd hope to think I played at a decent level, both cricket and football. But everything I go back to is when I was younger. And the reason why I started this career was because at 14, I actually got cut from a squad. And the reason why I got cut was because I was too physically, I wasn't big enough. I got pushed off the ball. And that pretty much relayed the reason why I wanted to become a strength coach, or why I had interest in health and fitness, human performance, was I was obsessive with it from the age of 13. If you actually read some of my posts, I actually used to print off bodybuilding posters and how they used to train. And this is back when I was 12 or 13. And I used to print it off and I used to smack it on my wall and say, okay, well, this is how you train your chest. And it was back then, it was pretty much train like a bodybuilder. As most of you guys know, most strength coaches, you start off as train like a bodybuilder because you don't know any other way. And that's the way the mainstream media goes. And I used to print off these photos of guys curling, extending, a lot of isolation, leg extension, leg curl, shit like that. And I used to put it on my wall, and I used to look at it. And when I was younger, went back, I played football since I was 6 or 7 anyway, and I went all the way up, and obviously I only quit like 4 years ago because of this business, and I went to America, and I still want to come back next year. That's the dream that I harbor. It's just an issue with work. I work a lot, and it's very hard. So back when you're younger, the first thing you're told to do is run for athletic performance. Run, 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 run. When you run, what system are you developing? You're developing your aerobic cardiovascular system. And you're told to run for prolonged periods of time. So you look at cross country in schools, they don't push you into sprinting or doing any athletic development. It's not really sprinting. It's a big focus placed on, if you're a junior footballer, you're told to run. And you're told to run, hey, if you want to improve your athletic performance, you should run. And you should pound the pavement for 10, 20 kilometers, and you should run. That's how you can improve your football performance, your athletic performance. And it's always interesting, and I always think to myself, if I knew what I knew now, and it sounds stupid, but if I knew what I knew now, and I trained like an athlete, and I started this from when I was 9, and so I did some sort of movement-based training. I did some movement efficiency-based training. I got taught basic athletic development, athletic attributes like sprinting, jumping, understanding how to land, understanding how to accelerate, de-accelerate, and change the direction. These are basic motor skills you need to learn as an athlete, which we don't get taught as Australian kids, because as I said, we focus on aerobic development. There's a bit of data out there to suggest these days, and I'm kind of big into, as you guys know, the CNS, neuromuscular adaptation. When an athlete is actually younger, there's something called neuroplasticity. Now, your CNS as a kid is like putty, and when you're younger, it molds the stimulus placed upon it. So in the most important years of a junior athlete's life is the years from probably, I would say, 10 to about 15, where your nervous system is like putty, and you can mold it depending on the stimulus you placed upon it. Now, the biggest issue I have is you've got interchangeable fibers. When you're a younger kid, you're training completely slow twitch, your aerobic development, cardiovascular development, you're training completely slow twitch. So the fibers will adapt to that characteristic, and it's going to train you to get slower. And this is a big issue I have in terms of junior athlete development in Australia, because you see all these young kids and they're all breaking down, and you look at cricketers as well, they're all breaking down with either overuse injuries and a lot of soft tissue injuries, but mainly overuse injuries. And the greatest example I can give of that is, a few years ago, I was the head sports scientist at the National Soccer Carnival for Vic Metro. And I remember the physio came in and said, put up your hand if you've had an overuse injury before. And 3/4 of the room put up their hand. And what that is saying to me is, as a sports scientist, as a strength coach, these kids are overtraining, or their training loads are too high. They're not allowing enough rest or recovery. There's no monitoring involved, and they're doing too much running, too much aerobic-based work, and not enough musculoskeletal loading, not enough neuromuscular development. And that's terrible for kids age in the bracket of 11 to 14, especially when they're younger, when their body is quite adaptable to a stimulus, and you are flogging the shit out of them, and you are training to failure, or you're saying no pain, no gain, you must run for 20 kilometers. Never mind about the load going to their body. Never mind about the chance of overuse injuries and the long-term problems you can place on that athlete. And that's what's happening and that's what's happening at most local clubs. Is what a lot of people don't understand at local clubs is, you have their health in your hands. As a junior athlete, these athletes could play next level. They could go further on in their career if you have more of a sports science and you have a training smarter attitude. And the biggest issue is these days is they are flogging these kids. I'm going to relate back to America here. And what happened was, when I was there, they had in America, they have like these days where the schools come to these big universities. So Maryland University was obviously the university I was at, and they had these training days. And what they do at these training days, it gives the opportunity for these coaches, the Maryland coaches, to look at some of the talent coming through from the local schools. And what these kids have to pay, I think it was like $200. It was for the whole day. And what they learned skills off these coaches. They learned physical prep. They learned how to recover better. It was like holistic. It was like a full preparation day for these kids. So over everything, technical, tactical, and physical, psychological, everything was catered for these kids, even down to the nutrition that they ate and they drank and everything they learned about their bodies. And these kids were ranging from anywhere from 14, 15 up to 18, 19, just before they hit college. And one thing that I got from these kids was the high standard of athletic development or physical preparation. I was taking one of the groups, so I had to take the speed-based group and learning about running mechanics, sprinting mechanics, and I actually said to them, because I was from Australia, and it was just so interesting to see the differences in athletic development from an American kid to an Australian kid. I understand gridiron is a purely anaerobic strength, power, speed-based sport, but you can still train similarly like strength, power, speed for an Australian kid like you can an American kid. And I was asking these kids, when did you start lifting? When did you start doing some sort of athlete-based performance coach training? When did you start laying the foundations for strength, mobility, stability, flexibility, conditioning, sprint-based mechanics? And a lot of these kids started when they were 12 or 11. It's actually funny, in the States, they actually have classes for lifting. So it's called lifting for performance or strength or power development, anything like that. I can't remember what it was exactly called. But these kids have an actual curriculum. It's built into the curriculum where they go to gym. So it's not like PE. They go to gym and they learn the basic primal strength patterns, squats, deadlift, Olympic lifting. So you're cleaning for athletic performance. And these kids learn it from the age of 12, 13. And when I saw these kids, it was unbelievable. I couldn't understand. Like, these kids were quick. They were explosive. They were strong. They had basic running, sprinting mechanics. They learned the basic motor skills needed for athletic performance. And in my opinion, the issue is in the Australian kids, they don't get taught these basic athletic development motor skills, like how to jump, how to sprint, how to land, eccentric strength, the ability to absorb the force and control the landing, the ability to change direction. The basic strength training needed on your basic primal patterns, your squats, your deadlifts, your explosive movement, your strength speed, your Olympic lifts, your speed strength, your plyometrics. They get taught that. Our kids don't. It's interesting. It was just so interesting to see and talk to these kids and say, well, where did you learn this from? Oh, we learned it from school. We learned it from our teachers, I don't think they're called PE teachers. I don't know what they're called there, but they have that specific class for lifting and athlete performance. It was unbelievable to look at and to see this focus on neuromuscular anaerobic development compared to the Australian kids, where it's all aerobic development, it's all slow twitch development. The Americans' kids are all fast twitch development. And when you come down to my performance center, you'll see the emphasis placed on junior development and the long-term view for junior development. So what we try and teach our younger kids is, and our junior athletes, is the basic motor skills in terms of sprinting, jumping, landing, acceleration, deacceleration, change of direction, strength, power. We place such an emphasis on teaching these athletes basic motor skills, but basic primal strength patterns in the gym, and which leads to really strong transference, but also a really strong, efficient junior athlete, which is so important because it lays the foundation for everything. And that's the biggest issue we see is we have kids come in here and all they've done is aerobic development. Now this comes down to education. Now, if you read my post, one of my goals is to evoke change and change the game, but also is to have a educated and applied strength conditioning coach in every amateur-based team in Australia in the next 5 years. If you look at what's common acceptance in amateur-based teams at the moment it's physiotherapists, which they've got their role as well in terms of diagnosing and treating and injury prevention. But to me, prevention's better than cure. So I can't understand why amateur teams wouldn't hire, like a physio, which we could make it mainstream, like a physio, a strength and conditioning coach who gives best practice on training, recovery, nutrition, hydration, anything like that, who can enhance your athlete's athletic performance, but also improve their long-term performance by educating the coaches and the junior developing athletes on a proper holistic strength and conditioning physical preparation program. And it doesn't happen here in Australia, not at all. It doesn't happen at all. And I can't, for the fucking life of me, I can't understand it. We've got so many educated coaches and applied strength conditioning coaches, sports science kids coming out of these universities, yet they don't get used. I don't understand why. I can't understand the benefit from just a basic body weight strength program for a younger kid is huge. The adaptation will be huge in terms of movement efficiency, in terms of strength, in terms of power, in terms of speed, in terms of injury prevention, in terms of learning basic motor skills for an athlete, in terms of neuromuscular development and developing the nervous system. It's huge, and I can't understand they won't do it because of traditionalist-based approach, because we're stuck in the 80s. Now, I'm not saying America is the be-all and end-all. I'm not saying, shit, they're the best. We have to go with everything they do in terms of student-athlete development. I'm not saying that, but there's little bits and pieces we can pick up from them that we can learn from. Example, start coaching these athletes. Get a strength coach in. And that doesn't have to be me or my company. I'm not saying that, but hire a strength coach, and there's so many, or give them an internship and let them develop. Let them develop their skills as a strength coach. They're not going to fuck them up. They're going to facilitate them. Obviously, you hope to know they know what they're doing, but most of them should know what they're doing in terms of basic bodyweight training. But hire them, because it's only going to facilitate. It's only going to complement your job as a technical, tactical-based coach, skills coach. It's going to complement the player's skill set. It's going to improve their ability to perform the skill and make them a better athlete. And it's also going to prevent injuries as well. So, I mean, that's what we need to start looking for. Like the American-based example, they do max effort sprints. They do plyometrics. They do your basics, primal patterns, your squats, your deadlift. They do cleans. They do everything. And they're developing their neuromuscular system, where the Australian-based athletes, because they think football's an aerobic-based sport and they've got to run for prolonged periods of time, and they don't have to do interval work, they don't have to sprint, they don't have to do vertical jumping, they don't have to do broad jumping, they don't have to do any strength-based work. If you read any of my posts, and this is for all the coach, this podcast was done for all the coaches out there, all the skill-based coaches, all the junior developing athletes. You know, if you read all my posts, strength is the foundation of everything. A stronger athlete's a more powerful and quicker athlete. Greater strength, greater power, speed, potential. So as your strength goes up, your power, your speed, your agility, even your work capacity to a point will go up, especially junior-based athletes. You can do strength training and they'll improve their running performance, their neurological efficiency out of sight. They'll be a lot more efficient as an athlete instead of just doing this cardiovascular aerobic work. So that's one thing that I wanted to get the point across in terms of junior-based athletes. So all the junior-based athletes out there, all the junior-based coaches, you have such, in terms of junior elite, junior development from the age of 9 to about 17, you have their future in their hands. You have their future in their hands. You can make such big inroads in terms of athlete development at such a young age, where the nervous system is quite plastic. It's like putty, and you can really develop them, and you can really let the athlete adaptation in terms of your motor pathways and developing lots of neural pathways and developing the nervous system. You have a really big opportunity where you can develop them. Go out and find an educated and applied strength conditioning coach who understands athlete development, who understands physiology, who understands neuroscience, who understands biomechanics, psychology, programming. You know, there's plenty of them out there. Go find them, because you have such, you can't underestimate how much of a chance you have to mold their careers and make them better athletes at their sport, and really lay the foundation. I call it like a house. If you don't have the foundation for your house is going to fall down. So you can really lay the foundation of strength, mobility, flexibility, stability, sprinting mechanics, jumping, landing, change direction, acceleration, deacceleration, and neural development. You have a real big chance and a real opportunity to really lay the foundations of injury prevention as well, and really make these kids really strong athletes and better performed athletes for the future, instead of just flogging them to the ground and not using sports science, not monitoring them, and using the old system. Well, I didn't do that 30, 40 years ago, so my athletes aren't going to do that. Well, you've got to start looking at them like an athlete. You have to stop thinking they're just football players. You've got to start being more holistic. It doesn't matter what age, you can start implementing this. This can be 10 to 15 minutes before your session even starts, or you can do it at the end of the session. It's not time consuming for these young athletes because their window adaptation is quite large. So any stimulus that you give them will yield really strong adaptation and improvement in performance. So you have to start looking at them more holistically and more from a perspective of, okay, let's increase athlete performance with a proper physical preparation program. Let's decrease chance injury. And this is what's going to happen is it's a domino effect, because once you start doing it, be a pioneer. Don't start going, well, just because no one's done it doesn't make it not right. Start being pioneer and say, okay, well, I'm going to take a more of a sports science, holistic approach to how I prepare these younger athletes instead of flogging them into the ground, instead of running them for prolonged periods of time. You know, that's why I brought out this WSSC high performance football and rugby program is to redefine how we view off preseason training, how we view physical preparation. Gone are the days of strength training will make you slower, make you weaker, will make you muscle bound, less mobile. Gone are the days of running long, slow distance running. It's more movement efficiency, movement based training. It's more about intervals. It's more about sprinting mechanics. It's learning how to jump, how to land, how to accelerate, how to decelerate. These neuromuscular anaerobic athlete development qualities are so important now. And that's what I'm trying to bring over here, because most of the time we are stuck in the past, especially in the amateur clubs. We're so stuck in the past. You've got to start taking the approach now is let's raise the standard. The way we prepare will dictate how we perform. Let's start looking at other ways. Do the same thing, get the same result. Do something different. Step out of your fucking comfort zone and take a risk. It's not even a risk. Sports science has developed from 50 years ago. We are still stuck in the come to training, 3 long, slow distance laps, static stretching. That's fucking outdated. Sports science has developed, but for some reason we're still stuck in it. And I'm trying to use social media as a form to develop knowledge, but also push what we do. And that's what I'm trying to do. So this goes out to all the skill-based coaches, all the young athletes. Contact us and see the difference. See the difference in your performance, also injury prevention. Even if you don't contact us, go to another evidence-based practitioner out there. And that's what we're trying to develop. Other than that, guys, that's my podcast. That's my rant today. Hopefully you guys take something out of it. Please share it with any skill-based junior developing coach. I'm always happy to talk to any junior developing coaching about sports science, about applied strength conditioning and our methods. Any questions, Christian at woodfordsssc.com or PM the Woodford Facebook page. Other than that, guys, any questions, leave comment on the comment box. As I said, I'm really passionate about this one area in terms of junior athlete development. I think there are better ways that we can be doing and implementing programs that are more efficient for our junior developing athletes in Australia compared to the States, where you've got young kids who have such a focus on neuromuscular and aerobic development at such a young age. No, it won't stunt your growth because it's all relative to the individual. It's not like you're going to be loading up and doing 100 kilo squats off the bat. It's more about movement-based CNS training and learning how to move and learning how to adapt and learning how the body becomes more efficient. Other than that, guys, thanks for listening to my podcast on junior athlete development. Hope to see you down the center soon. Thanks very much.